letting everyone know that I'm starting the stream. Welcome back. I am live on Twitch now. Join Twitch. As usual, I guess today I'm a little bit more organized than usual. I know I'm starting off the show as usual with having to send out the tweet letting everyone know. I suppose for those of you that subscribe, then you'll get the little warning letting you know that I'm starting the show today. Today I am talking about Wireshark. Yes. Hello, Yuri. Good to see some folks back here. Let me get the old stream started here. So today we're going to talk about Wireshark capture setup. So, you know, this may be a little bit on the hardcore side for some folks. It's let me bring up the old Wireshark to show you. You know, look, here's the Wireshark software, and you know, it's kind of wait, is that the right one? There we go. So yeah, so this is the Wireshark software, and you know, look, this is kind of hardcore stuff. This is the same capture I was showing you earlier on from when I went to the local restaurant. And you know, you look at this software and it may not be the most kind of user-friendly experience. I can tell you the first time that I looked at wireless packet analysis software, it was like reading Chinese, and I don't speak Chinese whatsoever. I don't understand any of the characters or anything like that. Basically, what I'm saying is it was totally confusing to me. I didn't understand what I was supposed to be looking at, what the value was, etc. And that was a long time ago. That was back in, I want to say, around 2004 when I first started looking at packet capture, when I first started looking at wireless protocol analyzers. And it took a while, but honestly, I would say within maybe the neighborhood of a year of doing it, probably even less than a year, probably more like 6 months, then it became kind of an indispensable tool for trying to find out the true nature of what was happening over a wireless network. The whole thing I always like to say to people about capture, and I will post it in the chat area here for those of you that are with me live, is actions speak louder than words. It's an old cliche, but the basic idea here is that you're just getting mere words. You're just getting the system's interpretation of itself when you see things in the CLI, things in web interfaces, things in management tools, in all those types of areas. You're just getting a wireless controller, a wireless access point, a wireless management console's interpretation of itself, or a client device's interpretation of itself. The actions, you know, what the client device or the access point is truly doing on the network, are in the frames, in the packets, as they are commonly called. There you can see how the client device or how the wireless access point is really behaving. And yes, capture speaks louder than heat maps. That's another good way to say it. And so yeah, that's kind of the idea here, is that is that if you want to get to the true nature of something. So, you know, look, in my opinion, capture is typically not your first step in troubleshooting. Capture usually is kind of almost a last step, a last resort. There are tools like site survey tools that do heat maps and other types of tools, which I would generally recommend using prior to going in and doing a full capture. But it can be extremely useful to do a full capture if you need to learn about the true nature of something. And it can be a troubleshooting situation. It can be in response to a reported problem of some type. Or even if it's not a reported problem, if it's something that looks a little bit odd in your monitoring tool, in your monitoring software. And capture also could be something that you use proactively. If you know you're going to have to support a certain type of device, or you know you're going to do an upgrade to a new operating system version, in some cases doing a little bit of a, gosh, I have that little piece of hair out of place. It's looking ridiculous. In that case, you may kind of be able to use capture to, let's see here, what's going on. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting into my second screen here. I like to be able to watch kind of what's happening so that I make sure that I don't have anything that looks too odd. Sorry. So your son impressed by this Philly Godfather? There we go. So it just it may be something where you want to be a little bit proactive, and you want to be able to do you may have a new type of device you're going to support. You may have a new OS version that's going to be part of your wireless access points, and you may want to do a capture just to see how the access points are behaving, or see if there's anything different in what the access points are sending out to client devices. You may want to check the client devices, see how they behave when they connect, when they roam, etc. Oh shoot, I forgot to change the message for starting today. I still have the same message from last week. Let me do a quick test here by texting hi and making sure it comes through. Okay, good. There we go. Sorry about that. Disorganized as usual. But yeah, so that's the idea. That's why I'm such a big fan of doing wireless capture. And it was pointed out to me on Twitter. Someone sent me a message saying, "Hey, I would appreciate just going over the basics of capture." A lot of what I've talked about on here and what I've talked about on the blog. Again, my blog. I don't blog as often as I should, but my blog is sniffwifi.com. What I talk about here and what I talk about on the blog sort of assumes a certain level of knowledge about capture. I'll say, when you're capturing, look for this. Here's a pattern of frames. Here's something that I saw in an iPhone. But I don't talk that often, or certainly I haven't talked in a while, about just the basics of setting up a capture, the things you want to keep in mind when doing it, etc. So I thought that was a good thing to go through this week. I didn't have a better topic that I thought of. The person who suggested it on Twitter was like, "Hey, this may be a little bit basic for a full stream, but if you can go through some basics of Wireshark, I'd appreciate it." And I was like, you know what? I don't have anything better that I've thought of this week, so let's just make it a full topic. Let's get into it here. Enough of the old introduction. There's my sort of little presentation here. I call the show Wi-Fi Streamin with Ben Miller. Try to do the show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Right now we're in Standard Time, so it's PST, Pacific Standard Time, here in the United States, or at least on the West Coast, I guess. In some areas of the Mountain Time Zone, they don't do daylight savings time, so the Standard and daylight savings time thing is irrelevant. It would be PDT if we were in the summer, if it was daylight savings time. So welcome back to the January 29th episode here. Topic today, again, is Wireshark setup, but I guess it doesn't have to be Wireshark. Wireshark is definitely, from what I've seen, become kind of the de facto Wi-Fi sniffing tool. I used to be a bit of a Wireshark hater, and there are still things that I really, really like about the Air Magnet tool. Technically, the name is it's from the company that owns it now is called NetAlly, Netally, and the tool is Air Magnet Wi-Fi Analyzer. There's a number of different air magnet tools out there, but Wi-Fi Analyzer is kind of it's their first tool that they had. It's what I would consider their signature tool, and it's the tool that allows you to do protocol analysis. Another one that I really like is from Live Action, and that one is called OmniPeak. OmniPeak is definitely more akin to Wireshark. But, and look, I love the Live Action folks. I think they make a fantastic tool. If all things were equal, I would definitely prefer using Live Action OmniPeak to using Wireshark. I guess the fact that it is more of a hardcore tool has made it something that I use less often, as Wireshark has at least in my eyes, kind of gained prominence. It's like, OmniPeak was always my favorite tool, but then especially when I worked at USC, it's like everybody there, not that many people who worked at the IT department and worked as part of the networking group or adjacent to the networking group, not that many people would do packet captures, but if someone did packet captures, it was always in Wireshark. Nobody used any other tool besides Wireshark. The consultants we had brought in, folks from the wide area networking group, folks from the networking group, if you needed to do any kind of capture, it was always done in Wireshark. So that was kind of the tool to use if I had to do anything hardcore. And so at least what I found is I ended up kind of gravitating more towards Air Magnet when I would want more of a commercial tool. The basic deal with these tools, what I've always said about these tools is it's an exchange of money for time. I have to pay money for a license of Live Action OmniPeak. I have to pay money for a license of Air Magnet. And in exchange for that, I'm saving time. I'm spending less time on sort of the typical capture and analysis tasks that I might have to do. And I still believe in that. I still believe that there's value in Live Action OmniPeak and value in Air Magnet, by saving you some time, even though you have to spend a little bit of money. But it's just because because USC had sort of standardized on Wireshark, it was like, if I'm doing hardcore analysis, I might as well stick with Wireshark, because otherwise I'm going to have to sort of convert over anything I do in Live Action OmniPeak into Wireshark. And then Air Magnet is a little bit less of a hardcore tool. Air Magnet is kind of designed to glean the essential information that you would get from a capture without having to get as hardcore, without having to look at things sort of packet by packet. And so Wireshark has kind of become the main tool that people use for wireless protocol analysis, but I still do have a lot of fondness for Air Magnet Wi-Fi Analyzer and for OmniPeak. So those are two other options there. But for today, I'll try to keep this as broad as possible. Wireshark's completely free. I think it's wireshark.org is the place you can go to download Wireshark if you haven't before. And I strongly recommend getting it. I especially recommend getting it if you are a Mac OS user. That's what I'm going to show you a little bit is stuff on the Mac. That's what I'm using today. On Windows, there are ways to do no cost or very, very low cost wireless packet capture into Wireshark. But to be honest with you, I haven't set it up yet. I know there's some pretty good blogs out there about it. It's just I haven't gone through the blogs and totally set it up. If you are a Windows user, apparently the tool you want to get is the WLAN Pi. The WLAN Pi is one of these little kind of mini computers that you can run stuff on. And then here I have the adapter. Let me look through my bag of junk. Have my little carrying bag with half dozen or so USB adapters that are used for various things if I'm doing anything wireless related, and this is the one that you can use, or at least now there may be other versions as well, but this is the CF912AC. It's the CF912AC. It's a USB adapter, and at least to my knowledge, if you have this USB adapter along with the wireless LAN Pi, the WLAN Pi, then you'll be able to do wireless packet capture into Wireshark on Windows. With Mac OS, you don't need to go through that kind of whole rigmarole, but with Windows, it's a little more complicated. Here, I'll share with you a web browser that kind of shows me that gives you a little look here at what a WLAN Pi looks like. But yeah, hopefully this will have a nice picture on it. Good enough picture. Yeah, so hopefully you can see that there pretty well. See that little box? Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm trying to show here. That little cube, if you will, and it if you think about the scale, that's just an ordinary network cable, whatever that is, Cat 5e, Cat 6. So this is a relatively small little cubicle shape, and so you can hook that thing up via USB to your Windows machine, or you can hook it up via network cable, but you can hook it up via network cable or USB to your Windows machine, and you can do wireless packet capture via that USB adapter, that CF912AC USB adapter. So the point is that because of the fact that Wireshark does offer this, because of the fact that Wireshark is free or at the very least low cost to be able to do wireless packet capture, I think that's kind of the main thing that's pushed it to be sort of the standard tool. And so that's what I'm going to sort of standardize on. That's what I'm going to focus on. Real quick, before I kind of get into it, for those of you that may be new to the stream, my name is Ben Miller. Been in Wi-Fi a long time, doing a variety of things in Wi-Fi. Currently, actually, I am kind of looking for my next gig. And so, if any of my Twitch stream viewers know of a gig, at least typically what I do is contracting to do training or consulting, technical writing. I've done some marketing writing and things of that nature. I am kind of looking for my next gig. I have been a contractor for a long time, but I'm at least open to the possibility of full-time employment as well. So if you know anything good that's out there or someone who's looking, definitely send the contact my way. If you do want to get in contact with me, email's a great way to do it. Ben_Miller@iCloud.com. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, at Ben Miller. Send me a message on Twitter, and I'll follow you back. I do get followed by a number of bots, so I don't automatically follow back everyone who follows me. And then obviously my Twitch. And look, very much appreciated if you subscribe to the Twitch stream. There are a couple of kind of additional things that I'm hoping to do on Twitch. If I get a few more subscribers, and you got to get a certain number of subscribers to get to certain levels on Twitch to be able to do to kind of unlock certain features and such. So if you don't already subscribe, it is definitely appreciated if you decide to subscribe. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about Wireshark setup and talk about Wi-Fi capture, and let's begin by kind of talking about, well, what do I need if I want to do a Wi-Fi capture? I kind of touched on this before, but here are kind of some reasons why I might potentially want to do Wi-Fi capture. If I want to learn about client devices, and To be honest with you, I would say that this is by far the number one reason in recent years why I have felt the need to do wireless capture. It mainly is just learning about client devices, how they behave, etc. You know, years ago, I would do wireless capture for a number of reasons: to troubleshoot performance issues, for security reasons, to do little roaming information and testing and such. But what I found is that a lot of the infrastructure monitoring tools have gotten either a little bit more robust, or maybe they always were robust and I just didn't know about it, and maybe it's just that they're more accessible to me. But I found that a lot of the information I used to look for in captures, I can now get from infrastructure monitoring tools. You know, those of you that are longtime watchers of this Twitch stream over the past, several weeks and months, may be tired of me talking about, Aruba and Nyanza Voyance and some of the tools I used to use. But just as an example, for Aruba, I would frequently use the show AP debug client-table command. And then you got to put in AP-name followed by whatever the name of the access point is that you want to get client information from. But when I would do that command, it would give me a lot of the information that historically I would look for from captures. It would give me the amount of packets sent. I'm trying to remember. It might have been bytes sent. It's been a few months since I've done the command, but it was either bytes or packets sent. It was bytes or packets received. It had a transmitted retry percentage. Talk about retry percentage in a little bit. Essentially, that is a collision percentage. It would also show me the transmitted and received data rate that the client device was, what the access point was using when it was sending to the client, what speed it was using, or what the access point was receiving from the client. That's the primary information that I would look for historically in packet captures. And so the need to do a packet capture to do troubleshooting of Wi-Fi performance was really lessened due to having the ability to run these commands. And I mentioned the tool Voyance. The company that makes it is Nyanza. They actually just got bought out by VMware. And the tool again is called Voyance. And essentially what Voyance would do, Voyance does a number of different things, but one of the things Voyance would do is just run that command over and over again and kind of glean information from that to give me a broader overview, kind of a macro view of collision percentages, data rates, amounts of data sent, a number of packets, or I can't remember again if it was packets or bytes. I think it was packets, but number of packets transmitted or received by the access point and by each individual client. And so, all of this type of information is a lot of the stuff that I used to use a protocol analyzer for, used to use, let's say an Air Magnet or an OmniPeak for, but it's just not something I need to do that much anymore. I would say for most enterprises, especially if you're a larger enterprise, you really should have one of those monitoring tools that can kind of aggregate this type of information so that you can do some performance analysis or performance troubleshooting. You don't necessarily need to do a packet capture. But what this stuff doesn't show me is just how the client behaves. Does this client support MooMemo? If it does support MooMemo, how does it interact with a MooMemo access point? Is the way the client interacts with a MooMemo access point different when the client is by itself or in a congested area? is the way the client acts with a MuMimo access point different if it's a Cisco MuMimo access point or a Mist MuMimo access point? Those are the types of things that, the client behavior type of things. Those are the types of things where you may really need to look at the actions. You may really need to look at the packets that a client is transmitting to really get an idea of how the client device is behaving. One of the things that we saw when I was at USC, for example, is we were definitely seeing some odd behavior in terms of clients kind of getting black holed. What I mean by black holed is where the client device is connected to the access point but is losing its ability to have internet access. So it maintains its association, but it has no internet access. We were definitely seeing the occasional black hole behavior, and when looking at packet captures in Wireshark, it certainly seemed to correlate with the MuMimo sort of handshaking that was being done between the access points and certain clients. The clients that were getting black holed seemed to be clients that all supported MuMimo. The black holing seemed to happen sort of shortly after this MuMimo handshake was happening. My operating theory at the time was that it was an issue with the clients trying to do a no ACK policy, and the access point, for some reason, not listening to that policy, not abiding by that policy, and still expecting the clients to acknowledge data. And, it's like if I diagram that out here real quickly. If I have an access point here and I have a laptop here, and the access point sends some type of data to the client, the access point expects an acknowledgement to come back from the client. But 802.11ac supports something called a no ACK policy. And with a no ACK policy, the client device can just accept data and not send back that acknowledgement. The issue, of course, is if the access point is expecting the acknowledgement and for whatever reason isn't abiding by the client's no ACK policy, what we were seeing was the access point just continually sending the same data over and over again to the client. And we never did get a full answer from the access point vendor, but what I think was happening was just that the access point wasn't wasn't acknowledging the no acknowledgement policy. It wasn't abiding by the no acknowledgement policy, and so the access point was just never was never moving on from that one data packet. What it's supposed to do is receive the acknowledgement and then send the next data packet to the client, but for whatever reason that wasn't happening. And so that was a perfect case in point of understanding a little bit about client behavior and about access point behavior by doing a packet capture. We weren't getting like a flag in our control, an alert in our controllers or an alert in our management software saying, hey, the no ACK policy is failing. We weren't getting any warning. All we were getting was just trouble tickets from students, professors, research assistants, etc., saying, I lose internet access. I'm in one building and my my laptop or whatever the device is has internet access, and then all of a sudden I lose internet access and I don't know why. The Wi-Fi connection says it's good, etc. And so that's it kind of, at least for me, the big reason to do a capture nowadays is just to learn about client devices. I would say the other reason why I found myself occasionally still doing captures is if I was looking for some type of kind of on-site, I'll call it an irregularity. So it's not so much that I would be trying to learn how does this iPhone behave, how does this touch book behave, or whatever device it is, or how does this access point behave, but it would more so be, I know there's an issue somewhere. The issue's been reported to me, so I know there's an issue somewhere. I look at the floor plans, the heat maps, whatever, there's nothing apparent there indicating, yeah, there must be co-channel interference, or yeah, the nearest access point is, 20 meters away, 60 feet away, a little bit too far away for the client. There's nothing readily apparent when I look at the floor plans and heat map. The user is reporting a problem of some type. There's no network issue, at least that we know of, in that area or with whatever type of device it is that someone's using. And so let me go to that area to try to get a little bit of a fuller view of what might be happening. And, maybe when I go to that area, I'll see something that wasn't readily apparent. If the whole idea there is, it kind of means so that if there's, let's say, a big cafeteria, that was one of the places where we had a couple problems when I was working at USC. If there's a big cafeteria here and there's 2 access points, one at each corner of the cafeteria, if someone is saying, hey, I'm having a problem here kind of in the middle of the cafeteria, these access points may not be able to tell me exactly what's traveling through the air at this location where this client device is. And so if I take a packet capture device to the location of this client device, I may be able to capture the traffic that's heard in the air by at the location of this client device, and sort of get a little bit of information about what's happening there, and potentially, find out what the problem is, find out why things aren't working well. For this, it was the simplest thing ever, as it turned out, for this particular cafeteria. It was just that one of the access points was not transmitting anything. Only one access point was transmitting any kind of Wi-Fi traffic. The other access point, I think it ended up, if I'm remembering correctly, it might have ended up being a power issue. If I'm remembering correctly, it was like the cable going to this access point was longer than 300 feet. And it meant so that the power to the access point was not particularly consistent. The issue was the access point was always staying up, but the access point didn't consistently have enough power to broadcast. And I may be wrong there. It might have been some other reason, but the bottom line is it was the access point's up, but the access point is not sending anything wirelessly. And by going to the location of the client device, I could see that very clearly. I could run a packet capture and I could see, okay, this access point that I thought I would see broadcasting, sending wireless traffic through the air, just wasn't sending wireless traffic through the air. So the point is, that's another potential reason why you might do some type of wireless packet capture. But again, I would definitely say the main one is just learning about clients. You work at a hospital, you have some type of voice communication device, or you have some type of device that's used for entering patient data, or you work at a university and one of the researchers has a robot that does certain tasks in a lab, and that robot connects via Wi-Fi, and the researcher is saying that the robot seems to have connectivity problems on the university's Wi-Fi network. Or you work in an office and someone gets some type of new video conferencing system, and not everybody has the ability to share their screens on the video conferencing system, or whatever it is. In those types of cases, potentially you can do a wireless packet capture to just try to figure out how those devices are behaving. And look, in all of those situations, the problem may not be Wi-Fi. The problem may be the video conferencing software. The problem may be, something in the hardware of the robot. Maybe the robot is maybe the robot's using some type of protocol that's blocked on your wired network. I'm not saying the problem's always going to be Wi-Fi, but you can at least learn a little bit about the Wi-Fi device, and that might be able to help you suss out whether the problem is in fact Wi-Fi, whether it is something that you can address. So that I would say are the big reasons why I tend to gravitate towards packet capture. If I have an environment where something weird is happening performance-wise, performance issues are being reported, but I look at the heat map or I look at the floor plan and things look like they shouldn't be a problem, then that way I can go to the location of the client and get an idea of what's going through the air in the location of the client, see if there's something that doesn't look right. That's one reason to do a capture. And then again, the biggest reason is just to learn about clients. How are these clients really behaving over the Wi-Fi network? So let's say you decide that you are going to do a capture. You have one of those two scenarios that I just talked about. Either you want to learn about clients, or you have some performance issue, or whatever. Maybe there's some other issue, some other reason why you decide I really want to see actions rather than words. So what do you need to be able to do a capture? One thing that you got to make sure that if your client device and your access point are 802.11 AC, that your capture device supports the same air interface. Okay, so whatever it is, you got to make sure your capture device kind of stays up to date. A tricky thing to note about, though, is don't forget the number of radio chains on the device. For example, I've run into this problem before. For example, my device that I typically use for captures is a MacBook. Whoops. It's the MacBook, the early 2015 edition of the MacBook. It's the 12-inch screen MacBook. That MacBook, that version of MacBook, is 802.11 AC, and it is 2 radio chains. So I'm able to capture at that level or below. I can capture 802.11n with 1 chain or 2 radio chains. I can capture any of the older 802.11 standards, 802.11a, b, or g. I can capture 802.11 AC with 1 radio chain or 2 radio chains. But anything beyond that, I can't capture. If there's a device that's using 802.11ax technologies, I'm not going to be able to capture that. Now, we've kind of talked about this in previous streams. A lot of 802.11ax devices will actually use 802.11 AC technology most of the time. So I don't want to make it seem like if you're working at a hospital and some of the doctors have bought iPhone 11s, that all of a sudden you're screwed. All of a sudden, I have an AC capture device. My doctors have iPhone 11s. iPhone 11s support Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 is the same thing as 802.11ax. I'm screwed. The iPhone 11, even if the iPhone 11 is accessing Wi-Fi via a Wi-Fi 6 access point and 802.11a6 access point, the iPhone 11 is still going to use 802.11 AC technology for a lot of its communication. In fact, it may use AC for all of its communication. And so I don't want to make it seem like you're totally screwed there. But if you have a 2 radio chain laptop like I do, and the device you're trying to troubleshoot is a MacBook Pro or some other device that has 3 radio chains, then you might actually be screwed. Then you might actually just be unable to capture the data that device is transmitting on the network and receiving on the network. I do want to be clear, when it comes to the whole number of radio chains thing, this is for data frames only. Okay. Non-data traffic. So non-data traffic would be management frames and control frames. Non-data traffic is going to use Wi-Fi 2 or 3 typically. That's 802.11a or g typically. And non-data traffic is going to use single stream. Or sorry, one stream, meaning 1 radio chain. So even if someone has a MacBook Pro, I do have the ability to capture their non-data traffic. I have the ability to capture their probe requests, the probe responses that come back to the laptop, the request to send and clear to send exchanges that happen when the laptop sends or receives data, the acknowledgement and block acknowledgements that happen. I am able to capture a lot of different frames that the device is sending and receiving, but I am missing data frames if someone has a MacBook Pro and I'm trying to capture it. What I'm sort of essentially saying is, I would say the MacBook Pro is kind of the preferred capture tool. If you have a MacBook Pro, the MacBook Pro is going to be Wi-Fi 5, meaning 802.11ac. The MacBook Pro is going to have 3 radio chains. So there's going to be very, very little modern Wi-Fi traffic that you are unable to capture with a MacBook Pro. In the event that there is full 802.11ax traffic, you would not be able to capture that with a MacBook Pro. The current, even the newest line of MacBook Pros does not support 802.11ax, and so you don't have the ability to capture 802.11ax traffic with a MacBook Pro. I think we may have talked about this already, but maybe I didn't on any one of these streams, but if you have to do Wi-Fi 6 capture, that's 802.11ax capture, you're either going to need to capture via an access point, or you're going to have to capture with the Jetson Nano. I am not what one would call a skilled hacker. I'm really not very good with software and with these little sort of single-use devices like the Jetson Nano or even like the wireless LAN Pi, the WLAN Pi. And so I would not call myself a real expert on precisely how to get a capture working with a Jetson Nano. But there are several blogs out there. Maybe later on during this session I'll try to find one of them and put the link there in the chat area. But yeah, that's what you can that's what you can use if you're worried about 802.11ax. I would say, my personal, not just personal but professional, my professional point of view on it at the moment is I'm not worried about 802.11ax, at least capturing 802.11ax, until I see that it starts getting used in the real world. Like if the day comes where I'm on site somewhere and the organization is using Wi-Fi 6 access points and the organization has some Wi-Fi users who have iPhone 11s or Samsung Galaxy S10s. Again, there's very, very few client devices that use 802.11ax. It's not like, the new Huawei phones, for example, do not use 802.11ax. The new Google Pixel does not use AX. The new Moto Razr does not use AX. So there's very, 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 very few devices that use AX. But if it were to happen that I'm doing some type of work somewhere, there's Wi-Fi 6 access points, there's Wi-Fi 6, there's 802.11ax compatible client devices. And if I were to see that I'm able to capture management or control traffic, but I'm missing the data traffic, if it's indicating that 802.11ax is being used and I'm not capturing it, then at that point I'll start to explore things more closely. Then I'll start to look into the Jetson Nano and things like that. I know that's maybe not the that's not the greatest attitude. Sort of violates the old rule, failing to prepare is like preparing to fail. So I'm essentially saying I'm not going to prepare for it until I see a failure. But part of it is just there's only so many hours in the day, and at least at the moment, I don't see 802.11ax as AX capture as a high priority, or at least certainly so far have not seen 802.11ax capture as a high priority. But yeah, so the bottom line there is, if I'm going to do wireless capture, that's what I'm looking at here. What do I actually need for capture? Make sure I have a device client device, an access point, some kind of device that has the right air interface, whether it's Wi-Fi 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, make sure my client device supports the proper number of radio chains. For most devices, that's all you need is 2 radio chains, but there are some devices that support 3 radio chains. I also need to make sure that I have a high enough SNR at the capture device. Okay, that's kind of the key thing there, is at the capture device, I have to have a high enough SNR. So if I want to capture the traffic that's being sent from a client, if I'm trying to learn about client behavior, I need my capture device to be close enough to the client so that I have a high enough SNR at all times, a high enough signal to noise ratio. That's what SNR is. A high enough signal to noise ratio to be able to capture. And a little tricky thing about that is your SNR needs may vary because SNR requirements correlate to data rates. You know, if I have a little client device here, I guess I've kind of used up that page a bit too much. If I have a little client device here, a little smartphone here, and that smartphone is sending out some type of data, that smartphone could send out one data frame at 173 megabits per second, the next one at 130 megabits per second, the next one at 117 megabits per second, back up to 173 megabits per second. The client device can change data rates from frame to frame, from packet to packet. And that's going to change the minimum required distance. That's going to change my SNR requirements. I need a higher SNR. There's going to be less range when trying to capture a higher rate packet, when trying to capture this 173 megabit per second traffic. For the lower rate traffic, I can capture from further away. So if I want to be able to capture everything that this client device is sending, I got to be at a relatively close range. But sometimes capture can get a little bit deceptive because you may be trying to capture, from this location. You may say, okay, I'm seeing this traffic, I'm seeing this traffic, I'm seeing this traffic. You may not even realize that you're missing some traffic. You may not even realize that, I did that in reverse. It should be that I'm seeing the further out traffic. You may not even realize that this 173 megabit per second traffic is being missed. If you're worried about that, if you say to yourself, well, gosh, Ben, how would I know? It's hard to tell that you're missing something, right? Like I'm seeing a bunch of data frames, but I'm kind of missing, how do I know if I'm capturing everything or if my SNR is too low with some stuff and I'm missing some stuff? What I typically look for is acknowledgments without data. If I see acknowledgments, or you can also look for request to send and clear to send handshakes, again, without data. If I see request to send, clear to send, but then no data following it, or if I see an acknowledgement, but no data above it, that kind of tells me I probably missed the data. What might have happened there is there might have been a request to send sent by my client device. Request to send is typically going to be 24 megabits per second. Could vary on some networks, but it is going to be relatively low speed, low data rate. Clear to send back from the access point. That's also typically going to be 24 megabits per second. I might then have data, again, that maybe as high as 187 megabits per second. And then that acknowledgement or that block acknowledgement that comes back, that's probably going to be at 24 megabits per second as well. That the access point is sending back, that's going to be at 24 megabits per second as well. So my signal to noise ratio can be pretty darn low to be able to capture this 24 megabit per second traffic. But my signal to noise ratio has to be pretty darn high to capture this 187 megabit per second data. So if I look at my Wireshark, if I look at my packet capture, I see request to send, clear to send, acknowledgement up. Where's the data? That probably means that I'm missing something. That probably means that my SNR was not high enough. You know, let me show you an example of that. In fact, let me bring back up that Wireshark capture that I did at the restaurant a little while back. Probably have some, I mean, here's an example right here. First thing I looked at. Request to send from this device here with a MAC address ending in 2CC0. Or actually, that's the destination MAC address. So going to the this device with a MAC address ending 2C0, clear to send. And we can even look in there to see if this was coming from the access point or going to the access point. If you're ever curious about that, was data going from an AP or to an AP, you can always look inside the header in Wireshark. The header is going to be notated by the name of the frame, by the subtype of the frame. And I can put that in the old chat area here. So in Wireshark, the to or from an AP is in the 802.11 header. And the header is the subtype of the frame. So in my little example here, you can see there under info, under that info column, that this is a request to send frame. I see request to send listed here. Let me actually, I don't need the, well, might as well keep them. Why not? So I can see the little request to send here. So that tells me that that's the header. Now when I open up that header inside the frame control field, so then I go in frame control, then flags. So I go into frame control, I go into flags, and it kind of tells you right here, DS status. DS status. DS essentially means the access point. So to DS means to the access point. Something that was being sent to the access point. And one thing that I forgot to mention here, I guess request to send and clear to send frames aren't going to have a to or a from DS, and neither will a block acknowledgement. So this isn't going to do me any good. For data frames, you will see that. Let's see here. Where's a data frame? There we go. So there you can see it. From DS to a station. So to DS equals 0. From DS equals 1. Hopefully that's clear there. 2DS is 0. From DS is 1. And so, yeah, so that tells me that this is going from an access point to a client. You know, the DS is the access point. So 2DS would mean to the access point. From DS would mean from an access point. But yeah, getting back to where I was before, you can see that there's a lot of cases here where for whatever reason, I wasn't able to capture data. I see a request to send, see a clear to send, no data, and then the acknowledgement. Here's an acknowledgement, no data before the acknowledgement. Request to send, clear to send, no data, and then an acknowledgement. Request send, clear to send, no data, then an acknowledgement. Then over here, no data, and then an acknowledgement. So this tells me that for some reason, for one of these reasons that we were looking at, let me bring up the reasons again. So for one of these reasons, and I don't know exactly which reason it was at this restaurant. Sorry, let me get back to where I was. It might have been that I was capturing with an AC device and maybe the traffic was AX. I really don't think that was the possibility. I could look in the beacon frame to make sure about that, but I'm 99% sure that they were not using 802.11ax. The reason could have been that I have a 2 radio chain device. Maybe there was a 3 radio chain client device that was connected to that access point. That certainly is a possibility. Again, I can look inside the beacon to see if 802.11ax is used. I can look inside the beacon to see how many radio chains are used if I'm worried about one of those things. But realistically, what was probably happening was just the SNR was too low. If I go back here, and let me bring back up Wireshark once more. If I go back up here, look at the signal column that you're seeing there. Hopefully you kind of see that over to the side. I haven't figured out if there's a way for me to sort of draw on my screen. Not positive if that's a possibility here. But yeah, you can see the signal negative 80 dBm, negative 63 dBm. Those are signal strengths that are all a little bit on the low side for high-speed data. If the 144, 173, 130, 187 megabit per second data rates are used, you're probably going to need a signal strength above negative 63 or above negative 80 dBm to be able to reliably capture the traffic that is being sent across the wireless channel. But I don't know for sure that SNR was the reason. It's possible that someone in this restaurant that I was in had a MacBook Pro. That's certainly a possibility. It's possible that whatever device was being used in that restaurant was a little bit too far away from the table that I was sitting at, and so the signal to noise ratio was a little bit too low. These are kind of the main things that you need for wireless capture. In addition to those things, a couple other little notes. If you're using, or if your users are using Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6, so that would be 802.11ac or 802.11ax, then it's possible that transmit beamforming will be used. Transmit beamforming is something that's required for multi-user MIMO, for Mu MIMO. If transmit beamforming is being used, then it's possible that you could have the right air interface. You could have AX or AC. You could have the right number of radio chains. You could have a MacBook Pro with 3 radio chains. You could have a high enough SNR, but you still might miss the data traffic. You still might be unable to capture, actually it would just be the data traffic. You still might be unable to capture it because transmit beamforming kind of requires being at a certain angle, requires being in a certain direction. I talked about this in a stream I did a little while back, but essentially what Mu MIMO does, or what transmit beamforming does, is it adjusts the timing used by antennas to essentially directionalize a signal. So the idea here is I have an access point. Here's my little access point. And inside this access point, let's say I have 3 antennas. And let's say my client device is located at a certain angle. So let's say this antenna is kind of the closest antenna. And let's say this antenna back here is the furthest antenna. What's going to happen with transmit beamforming is there's going to be a little kind of a handshake here between the client device and the access point so that the access point can understand which antenna's closest, which antenna's furthest, and kind of what the differences are between the closeness and the farness of the antennas. And then what's going to happen is when that access point decides to send data to the client, what that access point is going to do is it's going to have the furthest antenna kind of go first. And it's going to time things so that the phase of the radio waves, the phase of the radio waves is sort of meaning when is the radio wave at its peak? When is the radio wave at its valley? When does it get back to its peak? The access point is going to time things so that when the phase, or so that the phase of the furthest antenna's radio waves match up with the phase of the closest antenna's radio waves, for devices that are in the direction of this client, that are sort of at the angle of this client, below the access point, to the right of the access point, to the left of the access point, behind the access point, whatever it is. And so it'll make it so that the radio waves from the second antenna kind of match up. And their peak matches up with the peak from the further antenna. And same thing from this other antenna. The radio waves that come from this other antenna, its peak will match up as well. So the 3 peaks of the radio waves coming from these 3 antennas all match up. The 3 valleys of the radio waves, when the radio waves go into their valley, so to speak, they all match up. And so essentially you get a radio wave with higher peaks and lower valleys going in the direction of this client. But what it means for us when we want to capture something is we better be in that same direction. If we're not in the same direction as the client device, if we're, behind the access point when we're trying to capture, or to the side of the access point, or if we're at ceiling height and the client is at desk height, then we're not going to be able to capture because the direction is different. Now, that's something that only matters if TXBF is being used. And TXBF usage is not at all common. Even if you have 802.11 AC access points and clients, even if you have Wi-Fi 5 access points and clients, Wi-Fi 6 I haven't looked into as much, but I believe this is also true for Wi-Fi 6. But even if you have Wi-Fi 6, oh shoot, sorry about that, Yuri. Yeah, I sometimes forget about this. I forgot to put the drawing up. I'll redo the drawing. My apologies. Those of you that are longtime watchers of the stream may know that I often make this mistake and forget to put up the drawing. But yeah, so what I was trying to show there with the drawing was, if I have this access point here, and this also is the reason why I have the chat window up, but I was obviously forgetting to pay attention to the chat window. But yeah, I have these 3 antennas, let's say. I have my little client, let's say, here. And let's say I have an antenna that is the closest, an antenna that is the furthest. The idea of what's going to happen here, and I'm going to use red for this antenna, I'll use green for this antenna, I'll use orange for this antenna. What's going to happen here is the access point is sort of going to try to directionalize the data. Make sure so that the signal is strongest in the direction of this client. When the access point knows, hey, I'm trying to send data to this client, the access point and the client will have done a handshake so that the access point can figure out the client's direction. And then the access point is going to start by having the furthest antenna transmit. The radio waves come from this furthest antenna. And then maybe the second furthest antenna will start a little bit after that. And it'll time itself so its phase matches up, so that the peaks and the valleys are at the same time. The peak of the orange antenna is at the same time as the peak of the red antenna. And the valley of the orange antenna is at the same time as the valley of the red antenna. And then the same thing is going to happen for my closest antenna, for my little green antenna. Again, peaks at the same time, valley at the same time, peak at the same time, valley at the same time. And the end result of all this is I get the strongest signal possible in the direction of the client. But what this also can mean is, if you're trying to do a capture, you better be in the direction of the client. If you're in some other direction, if you're behind the access point, to the side of the access point, if you're up near the ceiling when the client is down at a desk, if you're trying to do capture from any of those other locations, you may not be able to see the data correctly because the phase of the radio waves may not match up at these other locations. because you may not have the whole closest and furthest the same way that the client device does. Exactly. So Yuri, the typical way that this is going to happen is this is going to be a single piece of data, and the idea is you're allowing the signal for that single piece of data to be stronger. That's what the idea here is for this transmit beamforming typically. Now, it can also be used for other reasons. It can also be used for, to do different data from the different antennas. But the bottom line is you are sort of angling the data in that way. You're making it so that the data is understood in one direction, but less well understood in another direction. So that's kind of the idea there. But it definitely is going to be essentially at the same time. It's not going to be where you have like frame number 1 from one antenna, and then you have frame number 2 from another antenna. That's not what this is. This is not 2 different antennas at 2 different times. This is all 3 antennas going at the same time, and the purpose of the 3 antennas going at the same time can either be to strengthen the signal in one direction, or it could potentially be to allow different packets to be heard in different directions, to make it so that, say, 2 of the antennas are going to directionalize their data in one direction, and 2 other antennas are going to directionalize their data in another direction. That's kind of the purpose of that. Hopefully that explains it, Yuri. If not, feel free to follow up. Maybe I didn't understand the question precisely. But these antennas are transmitting at the same time. That's, a key part of it. So, again, the key thing when it comes to capture, because, that's what we're trying to focus on today is on capture, is just understand that if you have a Wi-Fi 5 or a Wi-Fi 6 device that you're trying to troubleshoot, and you say, I want to do a capture on what data is going across the wireless channel for this Wi-Fi 6 or this Wi-Fi 5 device, this 802.11ax or this 802.11ac device, just be aware that if that device is using transmit beamforming, and transmit beamforming is a mandatory thing for MIMO, for multi-user MIMO. If transmit beamforming is being used, you may be unable to capture if you're not in the correct direction, if you're not at the correct angle for the client device. So, it's a little thing to be aware of. However, again, transmit beamforming use is not common. So, it's something to keep in mind, but like when I showed you the Wireshark capture from the restaurant, transmit beamforming is not like the first thing I would look into. I wouldn't say, I was sitting at one table and someone else in the restaurant was at a different table, so we're at different angles from the access point. So that must be why I wasn't able to see the traffic that this other client device was transmitting or receiving over the wireless channel. It's possible that was the reason. I didn't look at it that detailed. Maybe transmit beamforming was used, but I do know that transmit beamforming usage is not particularly common. And so I certainly would guess that the much more likely scenario was the SNR was too low, or someone at the restaurant was using a MacBook Pro, which has 3 radio chains, where my capture laptop only had 2 radio chains. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Exactly, Yuri. That's, when TXBF is used to kind of, and the idea is you're reaching the highest possible level of signal in a given direction. That's kind of the idea there, is you're kind of directionalizing the signal. In other directions, the phases of those multiple antennas may not line up, and so they essentially aren't getting as good of a signal. That's kind of the idea there. And I already have a friend calling me here, which is signifying that I got to make sure I don't spend too much more time. I haven't gotten far enough in though, so I'm sure we'll go for at least another 20 minutes. For those of you that are looking at what time we'll probably wrap up. Also, I always these streams get archived for 2 weeks on Twitch, and then also I always post these streams to YouTube. So if you want to watch one of these streams on YouTube after the fact, you can always do that if you can't stay with me live. But yeah, so in any case, that's one thing. And then this is for Wi-Fi 6 only. This last little part here. For Wi-Fi 6 only, if the Wi-Fi 6 OFDMA technology is used, then your capture device has to know about the resource units that a given client is using. It's a little bit of a complicated thing. You know, we've talked about it in previous streams. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on it. But essentially the way that this OFDMA technology works is it'll take one channel. Let's say I have channel number 52. So I have kind of the lowest frequency of channel number 52. To be honest with you, I forget the exact frequency range of channel 52. That's why I'm just saying lowest and highest. So there, channel 52 is essentially a frequency range. It's a 20 megahertz wide range of frequency. And so you have the lowest and the highest. And the way OFDM works is it kind of chops up the channel into different pieces for different client devices. So you might have one client device that is sort of going to use the lowest 8 megahertz, and that's going to be used for transmissions or reception for one client device. And there might be another client device maybe that uses the highest 2 megahertz worth, and that'll be for, you know, some other client device for its transmitting and receiving. So that's what OFDMA does. This is kind of my quick and dirty description of OFDMA. And so the idea there is, if I want to capture what a client device is doing and if OFDMA is using, I need to know this information. And this information is called the RU, or the resource units. I need to know how many resource units, meaning how wide the channel is. Is it 8 megahertz wide? Is it only 2 megahertz? Is it some amount higher or lower, in between? And I need to know where it is on the channel. Is it near the lowest frequency? Is it near the highest frequency? I need to know where those resource units are, where that channel width is, to be able to capture a certain device with OFDMA. So that's another thing that's specific to OFDMA. Again, for when I was doing that capture that I was showing you in Wireshark just recently at the restaurant, my laptop doesn't even support OFDMA. So if OFDMA was being used, I definitely was not going to be able to see OFDMA. Now, I didn't see any of the non-data traffic that OFDMA uses, so I'm relatively certain that OFDMA was not in use at that restaurant. And in fact, you know, if you remember the stream that I did last week, the stream on ghost frames, we looked a little bit at the beacons of the access point from this restaurant. You know, maybe I'll try to bring those up for you all if I still have those. I know I had them at one time. There we go. Whoops, I forgot to so these are all the same markings from last week, so unfortunately I excuse me, do not give me just a second here, sorry. Yeah, I messed that up a little bit. I do not have the ability to remove those markings. I accidentally saved the image with those little markings on them. That's basically what happened there. But yeah, let's get that where it needs to be. But yeah, this information you're seeing kind of down at the bottom there, might as well mark it up even more now that I messed it up. This information down here, this is all from the beacon of the access point that was being used at the restaurant. And I can tell that there's no Wi-Fi 6, that there's no 802.11ax because I don't see HE. Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax is the high efficiency, the HE amendment. Wi-Fi 4 or 802.11n is HT. Wi-Fi 5 or 802.11ac is VHT, or very high throughput. So I can see here that this restaurant's access, this is the free Wi-Fi network that I was looking at in last week's stream. At this restaurant, there is 802.11n, there is 802.11ac, there is not 802.11ax. HE would be Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax, and I do not see that. So I don't have to worry about the OFDMA problem for in that Wireshark capture that I was showing you all a little bit earlier on. So yeah, so that was something that I didn't have to worry about. What a mistake there to mess up my little scan. It's not like I can't go back to the restaurant, so I'm sure I'll be able to get another scan if I need to from that restaurant. But yeah, so that's what you need if you want to do a capture. So for whatever reason, if you try to do a wireless capture and you kind of see what I was looking at and you see, I'm seeing this request to send, clear to send, missing data, and then an acknowledgement, or I'm seeing just missing data followed by an acknowledgement. If you see that, then it's one of these reasons why you're not able to capture. So look into those things. Say to yourself, okay, do I have the right air interface? Do I have enough radio chains? Am I close enough to the AP? If you're using Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6, think about the angle or direction. Check in the packet capture to see if transmit beamforming might have been set up. If you're using Wi-Fi 6, check in the capture, see if OFDMA is used, see if 802.11ax or HE high efficiency is used. That'll kind of let you know a little bit about, whether your capture is okay. Now, let's say you have all your ducks in a row. Let's say that I have my AC capture device for my AC client device. I have a 2-radio chain capture device for my 2-radio chain client device. I have a high enough SNR so that I can capture my client's data. TXBF is not used by my client. OFDMA is not used by my client. So all my ducks are in a row. So then, what am I actually able to see? First thing I always like to emphasize, you gotta have monitor mode if you want a full wireless capture. There's another capture mode out there called promiscuous mode. That is for wired network capture. It is not a full wireless capture. Now, there is a downside to monitor mode. Monitor mode means no connection. So I do not have the ability to connect to an access point to keep my internet access via the same Wi-Fi radio that I'm capturing with in monitor mode. What some access point vendors will do is they will have 3 radios. They'll have a radio for 5 gigahertz. They might have another radio for 2.4 gigahertz, or perhaps even 2.4 with 5 gigahertz. It may be one of those software-defined radios. And they may have a third radio that can then be used for capture. Okay. And that can be helpful. Now, keep in mind what I told you before. SNR and direction can still be an issue. If your access point isn't in the right direction of where data is coming to the client, you might miss some of the data that the client is seeing. If the SNR is not the same at the access point and at the client, you might miss some of the data that the client's seeing. I'm not the world's biggest fan of access point-based capturing. I like to be able to capture from the location of the client device. But, if you're in a pinch, if you need to capture from your access point, that extra capture radio can be nice. So we've got to have monitor mode. We can only capture one channel at a time. Now, you can capture an 80 megahertz wide channel. You can configure your capture to say, I'm actually capturing 4 channels. I might be capturing 36, 40, 44, and 48. I'm able to capture all 80 megahertz here. You do have the ability to do that. That is considered one 80 megahertz wide channel. But what you don't have the ability to do is, let's say, capture, if you have one access point on channel number 36 and it's a 20 megahertz wide channel, and you have another access point over here on channel 44 and that's also a 20 megahertz wide channel, you're not going to be able to capture both of those at the same time. You're going to be able to either capture 36 at the 20 megahertz width or capture 44 at the 20 megahertz width. You can capture 36, 40, 44, and 48 if they're all part of the same 80 megahertz channel, but you don't have the ability to capture 2 different channels at once. Now look, you can scan. You can set your capture tool to scan and capture for a fraction of a second, for a few 100 milliseconds on channel number 36, and then the next few 100 milliseconds on channel number 40, and the next few on channel number 44. You have the ability to scan, but just remember, you're still only capturing one at a time. So while you're capturing on channel number 36 with the 20 megahertz width, you're missing any traffic, any data traffic or non-data traffic that goes across channel 40 or 44 or 48 or 52 or any other channel. If you capture on channel 48, you're missing 36, 40, 44, 52, 56. You're missing all other channels. So just be aware that you are only able to capture at on one channel at a time. Other little note, you're able to capture the MPDU only. MPDU means the data from the application and encapsulation, headers, etc. And encapsulation from layer 4 of the network, layer 3 of the network, layer 2 of the network. So the transport layer, network layer, data link layers, that can all be captured. That's all part of the MPDU, the MAC protocol data unit. So your TCP or UDP header, your IP header, your what do they call it? LLC, I think it was. I'm probably messing that up. Your 802.11 MAC layer header, all of that stuff is captured. Any kind of VPN, encapsulation that you're getting, all of that stuff can be captured. However, the physical layer header cannot be captured. Wi-Fi has a physical layer header. Okay? Wi-Fi in the PPDU, the PPDU is the physical layer header plus the PSDU. The PSDU is the MPDU. Those are the same thing. So you have a physical layer header plus all of this stuff, plus the data and the encapsulation of the layers 2, 3, and 4. This physical layer header cannot be captured. The physical layer header may be interpreted and summarized, but it cannot be fully captured. You're not able to see the little bits of the physical layer header, okay? So just be aware of that. What you see in Wireshark about the physical layer is an interpretation. It's not it's not the actual bits. It's sort of Wireshark's interpretation of what was happening at the physical layer. Let me show that on the screen for you, and this time hopefully I'll remember to hide Wireshark before I go back to drawing stuff. Yeah, sorry again about that, everybody. But yeah, when I look, let me find some data here. Yeah, that's data. So here's my MAC layer header. Here's the LLC. Here's the IP layer header. Here's the transport layer header, the TCP header. So I'm able to capture all of that stuff. And notice here when you look at the bytes down below, notice, okay, here's the bytes of the MAC layer, or sorry, of the, not MAC layer, the transport layer header. They're highlighted in blue. See how they're highlighted in blue down there? The light blue color. Now here's the bytes of the IP header. Those are now highlighted in light blue. Here's the bytes of the LLC. Those are highlighted in light blue. Here's the bytes of the physical layer. Those are highlighted in light blue. So those are the actual bits that went through the air. But once you get to radio information, radio tap header, frame, or I guess, you know, the frame kind of includes everything. The frame thing is a summary. But radio tap header, radio information, that is not the actual bits that were sent through the air. That is Wireshark's interpretation. So this part of it, this is just Wireshark's interpretation. It's not, you know, there was no set of bits that said channel number 52. You see that A52, that means channel number 52. There was no set of bits that said channel number 52. There was no set of bits that said the signal was negative 36 and the noise was negative 93. That's my capture radio giving information to Wireshark about what the capture radio received. It's an interpretation. It's not what actually went through the air. So just be aware of that as far as what you're capturing. Give me a moment. Sorry about that. Had to cough there. So it's not exact. You know, it is an interpretation. It's not exactly what went through the air. So this whole thing here, this whole radio information, this whole radio tap header, this did not go through the air. The stuff that went through the air starts here. Starts with the MAC header, and then the LLC header, the IP header, the TCP header. Looks like this is a TCP acknowledgement. Do I have any actual? There we go. There's some actual data. So here's the data. This was encrypted. It looks like this was encrypted. You can tell if it's encrypted. Actually, that's right. You can't tell if it's encrypted anymore in the frame control field. Oh no, looks like it wasn't encrypted. It was HTTP. Never mind. But yeah, so there you see the data, TCP header, IP header, LLC header. So you're able to see all that there. But again, physical layer header is an interpretation. Give me just a moment to get back to what I was talking about. Okay, good. So it's showing up correctly. So yeah, so that's kind of what you have the that's what you have the ability to do. You have the ability, you know, if you're in monitor mode, if you're on the correct channel, and that's channel number as well as channel width. If you're on the correct channel, if you're in monitor mode, you can capture the MPDU. You can capture data plus application from layers 4, 3, and 2. You cannot capture layer 1 encapsulation. It can be interpreted and summarized, but you do not have the ability to capture. The other limitation on capturing, if you're using OFDMA, the only way to capture the full channel is if you're capturing via an AP. At least today, if you're using that little Jetson Nano, you know, the Jetson Nano, that would be client-based capture. If you're using the Jetson Nano, you can only capture a single client today. Okay. So yeah, so that's kind of what you can capture. So let's take a look at it here. Let's talk about our little workflow here of how we're going to do a capture. So let's say that I am, give me just a moment here. say that I'm at the restaurant. There I am with my little capture from the restaurant. I'm at the restaurant. There's some type of problem with my Wi-Fi. What is my workflow here? Well, my workflow is going to start with trying to identify the channel of my problem. So whatever client device there is, you know, you're told by someone this client is having a problem, or you're trying to maybe prepare for an event and you're doing some type of surveying, some type of testing. You first want to know which channel you're going to be on. Now, I was on channel number 52. So my first step here is I need to identify which channel I'm going to be on. Step number 2. So now I know that I'm on channel number 52. Also, I do need to know the channel width. So I need to know the channel. I need to know the channel width. Step number 2, once I know the channel and I know the channel width, I want to make sure that I have the ability to capture whatever it is I'm trying to do troubleshooting on or do some type of analysis on. This screenshot here that you're looking at, this is from a tool called Wi-Fi Explorer. Specifically, it's Wi-Fi Explorer Pro. Wi-Fi Explorer Pro. And in Wi-Fi Explorer Pro, I don't necessarily have the ability to find out what the problem device's channel is. You know, I might have to look on someone's device to find out what channel their device is on. Give me a second. I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about here. I'm going to show you a screenshot of my phone. Take me just a moment to bring that up. Maybe the easiest, well, let's just bring it up this way. All right, definitely need to reduce the size of that so you can see my phone a little bit more clearly here. So this is a live screenshot of my phone. Okay, and if I look at my phone here, look on the little wireless tools, there's a couple of different ways that I can find out which channel I'm on. If you have diagnostic information, the diagnostic capabilities installed on a modern iPhone, you can just go right into settings and right into Wi-Fi. And when you hit the little information circle there by your Wi-Fi network, you can see my Wi-Fi network is called Attic. When you go to the little information circle, oh, do I not have the diagnostic set up right now? You know what? It looks like I don't have diagnostic mode set up. There's a little shortcut. I forget who made the shortcut, but there's a little shortcut that someone made. I'll have to get this link for you all. Let's take the password off the screen, at least momentarily. Give me just a moment while I log in here. Get that diagnostic information installed if I can quickly. Show you what that looks like here now that I put in the password. So I get asked, you know, do I want to download a profile? Yes, I do. Profile is downloaded. Go to the settings app now if I want to install it. Profile downloaded. Install that profile. We will pass on giving everybody my passcode. And once I enter the passcode, get the little, do you want to install this profile? There we go. Now the profile is installed. And now, if I remember correctly, there we go. Now it says diagnostic mode. You can see that there. Now when I hit the little eye, I can go to diagnostics. And there I can see which channel I'm on. Notice there it says channel number 149. So, if you have users, if you have people you're supporting who are having problems with their devices, that's one. If the person has this diagnostic mode on their iPhone or on their iPad, you can find out which channel they're on this way. There's also a free app for for Apple iOS that show or two free apps that you can use. Let me post the names of these apps here so you can use them if you want to. So these are iOS apps to find which channel a client is on. I know that's incorrect English. And the two apps are Network Analyzer. The light version is free. And another app is Airport Utility. It's an app from Apple. And so what I have to do here is I can use Network Analyzer. That's the app I'm in now. At the bottom of the screen, I got to show you this here real quickly. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see I'm in the info screen of Net Analyzer. Notice there's all these other little features that you have. Little speed test feature with Network Analyzer. Speed test feature is only in the commercial version of Network Analyzer. But the info screen is in the free version. And hopefully you can see there kind of right in the middle, BSSID. BSSID has a MAC address ending in 3E74. And if I remember that BSSID, then I can use this Airport Utility. You can see Airport Utility there in the middle. For Airport Utility to show me which channel that BSSID is on, I do have to go into the settings of my phone. And I have to go into the Airport Utility settings. And I do have to make sure that Wi-Fi scanner is turned on. Notice Wi-Fi scanner is turned on down there at the bottom. But as long as Wi-Fi scanner is on, I can go to Airport Utility. In the upper right, I can tap Wi-Fi scan. I can tap scan in the upper right. Pretty soon, I'm going to see a MAC address ending in 3E74. I'll stop the scan so that it doesn't refresh on me. But notice there, I'll kind of make it so it's the top one. MAC address ending in 3E74. And notice what it tells me. Channel number 149. Now, the limitation that you have here with Airport Utility is that it doesn't tell me the channel width. So it doesn't tell me, is channel number 149 a 20 megahertz, a 40 megahertz, an 80 megahertz wide channel? If I go back to that diagnostic mode, I am able to see the channel width. So notice there it says channel 149, 80 megahertz width. So ideally, you want to be able to see, you want to be able to use the diagnostic mode. The issue is you got to have a user who's willing to install the diagnostic mode. The other option you have is you can use your own troubleshooting tools. If you know that if you know what the user's MAC address is for for iPhones, for example, you can go into Settings, General, About to find out which MAC address the user is. So there you can see my Wi-Fi MAC address. If you know the user's Wi-Fi MAC address, you should be able to look into your infrastructure monitoring tools to get information about that MAC address. To say, okay, which access point is this device connected to? What's the channel number of that access point? What's the channel width of that access point? And so you should be able to find out kind of what information about the client device. Obviously, that's just iOS devices. When it comes to, Give me a second here. When it comes to Mac OS devices, you can find out your channel by going to the Wi-Fi settings. There's my little Wi-Fi settings at the top menu bar. Just hold down the Alt key or the Option key, and it'll tell you which channel your device is using. So if you are supporting Mac laptops, just hold down that Alt or Option key to go to the channel. Another option that you have here, in Windows, you can go to the command line and you can run the command netsh wlan show interfaces. That will tell you which channel your Wi-Fi device is on. So the bottom line is, again, getting back to kind of the workflow, and there's plenty of apps you can install as well. Yuri mentioning another app there from Ubiquity, so there's plenty of apps you can install. The tricky part is, again, in a lot of these cases, you may be trying to troubleshoot user devices that they have brought in. Sometimes people are, look, the last big project I was on was at USC, or at least the last big, consulting project I was on was at USC. And at USC, the students are allowed to bring in their own smartphones and laptops. In fact, they're encouraged to. Professors, research assistants, they bring in their own laptops, their own smartphones. And so I didn't really have the ability to kind of force someone to say, hey, install this diagnostic, install the Wi-Fi Man app, install, whatever. So, you may not be able to get people to install all this stuff, but, if you can, it can definitely be helpful. Again, the nice thing is for laptops, for Mac laptops and for Windows laptops, you have the ability to find out which channel someone's on without having to kind of go through all this. I'll show you it for Windows here real quickly. It'll take me just a second for Windows to start up so that I can share that with you, but I'll get that up and running here real quick. Where was my little trusty Windows device? Yeah, it'll take a second for it to come up, so I'll have to show you that a little bit later on. Okay. Once that starts up, I'll get back to it. So again, my capture workflow here. Step one, I need to find out, and I'll kind of bring this up. I'll have to update it. Unfortunately, as usual, I didn't get all the way through kind of the preparation for this week. So kind of step number one here is I need to find the channel and the channel width of the client. So what channel is that client on? What channel width are they using? Number two, I need to know the capabilities of the client. So I need to know, what standard is the client using, how many MIMO streams, radio chains does that client support? Is that client using TXBF, or is that client using OFDMA? Is there anything about that client's capabilities that I kind of don't have? Then once I find the client capabilities, then I need a capture tool or capture device with the same or more capabilities. So in my case, when I was at the restaurant for the capture that I shared with you all last week, I have an iPhone 8 Plus. The iPhone 8 Plus is Wi-Fi 5, meaning 802.11 AC. It is 2-stream MIMO, 2 radio chain MIMO. It does not use TXBF. And so for my capture device, for my MacBook is also Wi-Fi 5, 802.11 AC. My MacBook also supports 2-stream. And I didn't have to worry about TXBF. So that told me, yes, this MacBook is going to be good. This MacBook has the capabilities it has capabilities that match or exceed the client device's capabilities. Then what I next want to do, kind of step 4 in my workflow here, is I next want to capture on the channel and at the correct channel width of the client device. So I begin capturing on the channel with the correct channel width of the client device. We saw, currently my client device is on channel 149 with the 80 megahertz width. We saw with the restaurant capture that I did last week, the access points in that restaurant that I was connecting to were on channel 52 with the 40 megahertz width, a little bit of a narrower width. Whoops. Sorry about that, everybody. Looks like I had not exactly sure what happened there, but looks like the stream momentarily went out. Sorry about that, everybody. I think the stream is now back. Yes, looks like the stream is now back. Apologies for that. So yeah, again, number 1, I want to know the channel and the width for the client. Number 2, I want to know the client capabilities. Number 3, I want to make sure that my capture device has or exceeds the client capabilities. Number 4, I want to set my capture on the correct channel and on the correct width that the client is going to be using. So today, if I was going to do a capture, it would be channel 149, 80 megahertz width. For the restaurant, I kind of talked about it last week, capture on channel 52 with the 40 megahertz width. And then step number 5 in my workflow is just have the user do something. So whatever it is, now, obviously this part's a little bit tricky, right? Because for anyone who's worked in IT for any amount of time, a lot of times it's difficult to replicate problems. And, I'm not real big on excuses. And so I really, really dislike it when networking folks, IT folks, Wi-Fi folks say, well, we can't look into that because you can't replicate the problem. It's like, you should know your network, even if someone says like, I can't my laptop's behaving differently today, right now than it was an hour ago when I was experiencing the problem, or differently today than it was yesterday when I was experiencing the problem. It's like, if you're the owner of the network or one of the owners of the network, you should know your network. And so you should be able to understand based on how the device is behaving at the time that you are able to capture it, and based on what you know about your own network, the nature of your own network and the settings you have and the architecture you have and such, you should be able to understand it to a good enough degree that you can troubleshoot without having to replicate. It just really bugs me when people give up on troubleshooting when they can't. Oh, we can't replicate the problem, so we told the user to call back when they can replicate the problem. It's like, I get it. You only have so many hours in a day. If we saw this at USC all the time. It's such a huge organization. I think, we get up to as high as about 60,000 client devices on a busier school day. And so there's only so many hours in the day. You don't want to spend endless amounts of time trying to troubleshoot one problem that may be kind of an isolated incident. But in a lot of cases, if someone said, yeah, the Wi-Fi sucked at the cafeteria, that's not an isolated incident. There may be chronic problems at the cafeteria, but you just haven't heard about them. It's just, people might not have complained about them yet. And so yeah, you know, it does bother me a little bit when people say, well, we need to replicate the problem if we're going to troubleshoot this thing. It's like, you know, you should know your network. You should have the ability to analyze your own network without having to, you know, have a client kind of replicate the problem. But, you know, the point is you want to have the user do something. Even if the problem doesn't happen again, maybe you can learn something about the network or learn something about the user's device. And then once you have the user, you know, do whatever it is you want to do, and obviously this is a broad thing. It could be connecting and just opening a web page. It could be running a specific application. It could be moving. It could be doing something while there's a crowd of people. It could be doing something while there's not a crowd of people. You know, whatever it is, you want to have the user do something because you're sort of trying to replicate the problem if you can. Then once you do that, then you are going to analyze those frames. And when you do the frame analysis, the things that I am typically looking for is I'm looking for the scanning behavior of the client. What does the client do when it's looking for access points, when the client is sort of trying to decide which access point to connect to or when to roam to a new access point? I am also potentially looking for sort of technology setups. Setup for transmit beamforming, the setup for OFDMA, you know, to see if my client supports these things. Maybe the setup, you know, for certain types of encryption or what have you. And then I'm also looking at application behavior. So meaning the amount of data that the client device is transmitting and receiving. And then I'm also looking for some sort of wireless specific information. Information like the rates that are being used by the client devices, whether request to send, clear to send is being used by the client devices, whether there might be a no ACK policy, if there are a lot of retries that are happening on the network. These are some of the things that I'm going to look for when I'm analyzing frames to try to figure out what's happening with my client device. So I would say, generally speaking, this is the workflow I would recommend. You know, it's like, obviously, you want to get to number 6. You want to get to that point where you're analyzing frames, but just make sure that you can get as much information as possible. Make sure you can capture as much information as possible, you know, so that you can, you know, look at what you need to look at, essentially. Let me get back to where we were and you know, kind of show you the example of that. And I think we might be able to bring up the Windows version here. There we go. I think we'll be able to do this. Hopefully. Give me a second to okay, we might not be able to oh, I'm typing the command. Okay, so I can show you this. Good. So yeah, here's the Windows version of finding the channel. Okay, so there we go. And I'm, of course, typing the command incorrectly. So you get into the net shell commands, and then it's WLAN show interfaces. Did I type that correct? Yeah, WLAN show interfaces, I did. Oh yeah, you're very welcome, Yuri. And like I said, there will be archive here on Twitch as well as an archive in the excuse me, in the on YouTube as well. I do need to wrap this up. I'm definitely taking way too long here. But yeah, so obviously I'm not connected presently, but if I make a connection here real quickly, then it'll show me which channel I'm on. Yeah, I've got to figure out a way to shorten the time it takes here for these streaming activities. I definitely take too long with this stuff. Okay, so now if I run the same command, there you can see it. Channel number 149. So same thing. NetSH WLAN show interfaces. So again, I know everyone kind of wants to get to the fun stuff, wants to get to the capture, but you just want to make sure that you that you capture everything you need to capture. Basically, that's the key thing here. And my presentation just crashed, so I am bringing it up again right now, hence the delay. Just waiting a moment for it to come back on here. The old presentation. Ooh. I may have lost the presentation for good. It's definitely not showing up at the moment, which is not a great sign. Give it another minute here. What I wanted to talk about was some of the specific things you can look for in Wireshark. So I guess what I can still do, it looks like I would have to reboot to be able to get the presentation back up. My apologies for that, everybody. Certainly did not want that to happen. There we go. Nope, still not up. Okay. So yeah, unfortunately, we may be. I may not be able to show you the last little thing I wanted to show you in the presentation, but I can still show you in Wireshark some of the things I'm talking about. So, bring up Wireshark again here. There's our little Wireshark. So, again, once I've found out that, I'm using the restaurant example kind of from last week, I found out that my iPhone was using channel number 52 with the 40 megahertz wide channel. We talked about the different ways you can do that, the diagnostics on the iPhone, or holding down the Alt Option key in Mac OS, or using the WLAN show interfaces command in Windows. So I found out the correct channel. I found out the client capabilities. I have an iPhone 8 Plus. There is a nice website that will show you client capabilities. It is clients.mikealbano.com. So here is Wi-Fi client capabilities. So you can click that link if you want to, clients.mikealbano.com. So I already knew that the iPhone 8 Plus uses 802.11ac, uses two-stream MIMO, does not use transmit beamforming. So, I already kind of had a head start there. If you don't know the client's capabilities, you can use that chart, or you can do some research on your own to find out client capabilities. Once you have the client capabilities, you make sure that your capture device has the appropriate capabilities. So I'm using a MacBook. The MacBook has 802.11ac. It has 2-stream MIMO, so it was able to capture everything. I made sure that the capture device was in an appropriate location. Got to have the right SNR. If you're using transmit beamforming, you got to be at the right angle. If the client device is using OFDMA, if it's using Wi-Fi 6, you've got to know the resource unit information, the RU information. So in my case, all I had to worry about was SNR. All I had to worry about was signal to noise ratio, and that was it. And then I started capturing on the channel. I started capturing on channel number 52 at the restaurant with a 40 megahertz wide channel. Then I had the client do something. In my case, I had the client do a throughput test. You know, I might have also had the client connect. Let me show you a quick example here. For example, if you want to find a connection in Wireshark. If you want to find a connection in Wireshark, what you can do here is you can look for an association. And if you say to yourself, well, how do I look for an association? You can look for an association by using a filter that can allow you to isolate a certain type or subtype of frame. And that filter, I'll show you it right now in Wireshark, is WLAN.type_subtype. Sorry, WLAN.fc.type_subtype. Oh, darn it. WLAN.fc.type_subtype equals, and then the hexadecimal kind of code for that frame type. So in my case, for the association frame. So here's the little filter. So if you put that into Wireshark, and that's what I'll do. Now, if you don't know what the little hexadecimal code is for association frames, you can use the expression window. Hopefully you saw that there. I clicked on the expression window at the top of the screen, and I'll bring up what just showed up here. Give me just a moment. So here's the expression window that shows up when I click the expression button at the top of the screen in Wireshark. So hopefully you can see that there, the expression button just to the right of the filter bar. And I can sort of type in here to the search wlan.fc.type. It's probably already there. And there it is, wlan.fc.type_subtype. I do the equals, and then I can choose which type of frame. So I'm looking for an association. You know, the other thing I should have mentioned here, you can also look for authentication frames. In fact, the authentication probably is a little bit better because if it's a roaming device, if it's a device that's roaming, the device will use reassociation instead of association. If you just want to see all connections, you can look at the authentication frame because the authentication is used with initial connections and the authentication is used with roaming. And notice down here, it then shows me what I'm using. It's so for authentication, the hexadecimal code is 0xb. So I put that in here. Oh, darn it. I just messed it up again. I'll go back to it. Expression. WLAN.fc.type_subtype. And I want association. I'm sorry, I want authentication. 0xb. I click OK. So now what happened after I click OK, notice at the top of the screen, I now have the little 0xb. I click the little blue arrow to apply that filter. And there we go. There's my authentication frames. So these are all the authentication frames that were being sent back and forth. And you may have taken notice of it. This MAC address ending in FB54, that's my phone. So if what I was trying to troubleshoot was someone connecting or someone roaming, now I found what the phone, what was happening with the phone. I can kind of take note of that packet number. Notice on the left-hand side, packet number 3945. And if I want to, I could apply another filter to show everything that a certain device is sending and receiving. So if I want to isolate one device's Wi-Fi traffic, I use wlan.addr equals, and then the device's MAC address, the device's Wi-Fi MAC address. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I think I already have that frame, or sorry, that filter. I have wlan.ra. I can change that to addr. So now I want to find packet number 3954 or 3945. There it is. So this is everything that my iPhone was sending and receiving. So I see my iPhone sent a probe request. Probe request was looking for essentially any Wi-Fi network that was out there. I can see that this probe request was looking for any Wi-Fi network, or actually it wasn't. I'm wrong about that. This was probing for the restaurant that I was connected at. Probably shouldn't show the restaurant there. I see the probe response that came from the access point, and there is my client authenticating to the access point. Authenticating in Wi-Fi really doesn't mean anything unless you're doing fast, secure roaming with 802.11r. I'll talk about 802.11r in another stream. And there's my client devices association. There's my device associating. There's my access points association response. The association request is a useful frame a lot of times because it gives you a lot of information about the capabilities of the client device. So I'm trying to sort of collapse all of the, I think there might be a collapse all. There we go, collapse all. So this is all stuff that my client device supports. Everything under these fixed parameters and these tagged parameters, that's all stuff that my client device supports. So this tells me my client device supports N. Remember, HT is N. My client device supports AC. And it even tells me a little bit more about the client device and what it supports. My client device supports 2 spatial streams. Notice 3 spatial streams, 4 spatial streams not supported. So it's saying my client supports AC with 2 spatial streams. My client supports a transmit power as low as 5 dBm and as high as 20 dBm. So that's the range of transmit power that my client device supports. Tells me all the channels my client device supports. Channel 36 and the next 3 channels after, 52, the next 3 channels after, 100, the next 11 channels after, 149, the next 4 channels after, and then channel 165. So it's telling me all the channels that my client device support. You have to subtract 1 from the range because 100 is the first in the range, so it's the next 11 channels after channel 100. So I'm able to see information about my client device here. And then so again, you can use the WLAN fc.type_subtype to see a certain type of frame. If I want to see the disassociation, if I want to see the authentication, if I want to see the association, I can see that information. The WLAN ADDR will allow me to isolate one specific type of device. And then you can combine filters. So here is WLAN.addr, so it's isolating my device. And it's also isolating data. That's what this little 0x28, that's the hexadecimal for quality of service data, for QoS data. So this is all of the data that my client was sending and receiving while I was doing my capture. And so I can kind of scroll down. Now, what I did was a throughput test. And so I can see kind of information about this throughput test. I can see, how many packets down below. Hopefully you can kind of see that in Wireshark. If you look all the way down at the bottom of the screen, kind of just to the left of my head, it tells you displayed packets 19,732. So there's 19,732 total packets that this client, data packets that this client sent or received. If you want to know just what the client sent, you can use WLAN. TA. That's transmitter address. So it shows me 12,109 packets were transmitted by my client device. So it shows me all of the packets that my client device transmitted. Usually this rate column will show you which data rate was used. Obviously, I am not seeing that at the moment, which is a concern to me. I had the same problem last week where I wasn't able to find the data rate. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Typically, I believe it would be in the radio tap header, or it might be in the radio information. Can't remember, to be honest with you, if it's in radio tap or in radio information, but usually you are able to see the data rates, but yeah, same thing, same problem was happening last week. I wasn't able to see data rates on these frames, but that's something that you can sometimes see in Wireshark is data rates. Data rate information can be very useful. Under the frame, yeah, that doesn't show data rates either. So for some reason, I wasn't getting I'm not seeing the data rate information currently. Maybe I need to update to a newer version of Wireshark or something like that. But the bottom line is you can kind of view all that stuff. And that was the thing I wanted to show you all to kind of wrap things up here. Whoops. Sorry, I forgot to hide Wireshark. But yeah, that was the last thing that I wanted to show you all is these are some useful Wi-Fi related filters to use in Wireshark. If you want to isolate one specific device, WLAN.ADDR. If you want to just look at when the device is a source or a destination or a receiver or a transmitter, you can do one of these filters, WLAN.SA, DA, RA, or TA in place of the ADDR. If you want to look at a certain type of frame, like I looked at the authentication frame, I looked at QoS data frames, you can use the WLAN.FC.type_subtype. And if you're looking for collisions, collisions are a good indication that there might be wireless performance issues, interference, and other things like that. You can use WLAN.FC.retry. Retry equals 1 means that there was a collision. And retry equals 0 means there was no collision. And so, yeah, that's kind of the, some information and, some stuff about the methods, at least that I use when it comes to doing wireless capture. So, I don't want to act like, wireless captures are something that you should need to do day to day. If you're on a research project, if you say to yourself, we just saw that this new model of iPhone came out. We know that a lot of the doctors and nurses in our hospital, they like to get the newest model of iPhone. Let's get one of these new iPhones for the IT department. Let's do some capturing from that iPhone to see if there's anything unusual, anything that might not jive with our network. If you're on like a research project like that, then you might do captures on a regular basis. But I would say in general, captures are something that you don't want to do regularly. You want to keep it kind of few and far between. You want to use your other troubleshooting tools first, typically. But if you do run into one of those weird problems, like I said, the problem that we had at USC where clients were being blackholed, the problem that we had in the cafeteria where things look good on the heat map, but people were saying that the Wi-Fi didn't seem to be working very well. You know, when you have those types of things happen, doing a capture can be very, very useful. And this is the workflow I would recommend. Find out what channel that client is on, find out the client's capabilities, make sure your capture tool has the correct capabilities, start a capture on the channel and the channel width of the client, have the client do something, you know, whatever it is you're trying to get information about. Maybe have the device turn on and turn off. Maybe have the device walk out of the room and walk back in. Maybe have the device run whatever application, do whatever web browsing or emailing or whatever messaging application people are having issues with. And then once you've done that, go into those packets, use some of these filters that I have up here on the screen and see what you can identify. See if you can identify, you know, anything unusual, any type of problem that may have been happening. I mean, you know, for this Wireshark capture, I talked about the transmit beamforming. I'm going to wrap it up pretty soon here. I realize I'm way over time. It's 2:15. My buddy that was calling me there is probably a little bit unhappy with me at the moment. But yeah, for example, one of the things I could look for here, bring back up that expression window. One of the things I could look for here is the control frames to see WLAN dot. Whoops, sorry. Supposed to do fc.type underscore subtype. And I could just do type control frames and get rid of the rest of this. Whoops, had the TA in there as well. And, you know, these control frames should be able to show me if there's any kind of transmit beamforming stuff that's happening. Whoops, where did I go here? There we go. Made the channel window a little bit too big here. You know, let's just get rid of channel. Where's my info window? There we go. Info is the one I really want. Sorry, now it's, let's get back to number. Okay. Yeah, if I go back up to the top here, I'm not seeing, I thought I saw some NDP announcements. Maybe I'm mistaken there. Ah, there we go. So yeah, this little, you see this little announcement that's made there, that little VHT NDP announcement. You know, that's setting up information, that's giving information about whether transmit beamforming is going to be supported and how it's going to be supported, if it is going to be supported. And so, you know, that's the type of information that may potentially be valuable. So this looks like what's happening here is I'll get rid of the filter so you can see the context around it. But it looks like what's happening there is, you know, this is destination of my client device. This receiver address is my client. So this is the access point sending something to my client. And the access point is essentially announcing like, hey, I want to do transmit beamforming. The key thing about this, though, is my client is not transmitting any kind of information about transmit beamforming back. You know, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised. This is probably my client just saying, I'm going to use the no acknowledgement policy. Yep, transmitter of my client, FB54, action, no act. So this is my client kind of saying, I'm going to use the no acknowledgement policy, and here's here's beamforming information about my client device. So you can see there kind of how that's being set up. And then, what we were seeing back at USC would be if the access point would send a frame of data. So here, receiver address is my client. So this is coming, or actually this is transmitter address of my client. So I would need to see receiver address of my client. There we go, receiver address of my client. What was happening was with certain types of clients, the client was not acknowledging anything due to that no ACK policy being enabled. And you would just see the same exact data packet over and over again. This same data packet would just be being transmitted over and over again. You'd see the same size of frame. The length field is the size of the frame. Let's see if I can shrink that up so that we can see the length field here. Looks like I've messed up the length field somehow. Yeah, I may not be able to see that. Oops, forgot to hide that. Sorry. But yeah, you can see the receiver is my laptop. You can see slightly before that, receiver was my laptop. This little announcement, this VHT NDP. NDP is not a null data packet. NDP is null data packet. So in this null data packet, the access point is essentially saying, tell me information I would need for transmit beamforming. In this action frame, the client device is indicating whether a no ACK policy will be used, and it's sending information about beamforming. The client is kind of sending sounding information back so that the access point knows more information so that the access point can set up beamforming if it needs to. And the problem that we were running into is then when data would go across the channel, so this is data here, and this is data where my client, the FB54, is the receiver address. When data would go across the channel, we would not see acknowledgments. So this is transmitted by my client. It's a block acknowledgement transmitted by my client. We would not see data. We would not see an acknowledgement. We would just see the same data frame over and over again. That same packet would be sent over and over again. And, that was an indication that there was some type of problem there. It's always it's a little bit difficult sometimes to pinpoint blame. You might say, well, that's a client issue. The client should really be acknowledging. You could say, well, that's an access point issue. The access point should use the no acknowledgement policy and just send data without waiting for an acknowledgement before the next data frame arrives. But, the bottom line is if you want to solve the problem, usually you don't have the ability to kind of tell your user, no, you can't use that client device anymore. Usually you have to, let the user continue to use the client device and then try to adjust the infrastructure so that it supports the devices it needs to support. Okay. All right. So very long stream today. Marathon stream, one might say. Man, every week I say, I got to get these things shorter. And then today's my longest one yet. So, my regrets on that. Hopefully it was useful to you all. Hopefully you got something out of it. And, through all of this, the problem with this being so long is I probably didn't even satisfy what the guy on Twitter who asked me to look at Wireshark was really looking for. I think he already knew a little bit about kind of how to get the capture going. I think he might have been more looking for the specific stuff about the filtering or how to set up Wireshark. So I'll definitely do that a little bit more at another stream. I'll get into more of the nitty-gritty of Wireshark, the different columns that you might want to use, the different settings within Wireshark, because I know I didn't get it. I only briefly touched on that at the end. Thanks again for watching. Please do subscribe if you don't already. Where is that on the screen? I believe it's, I forget. I think it might be up at the top. I know it should be. I should know how to subscribe to my own stream a little bit better than this. But the point is, there is a way to subscribe. And I just, man, it's really sad that I don't know how to subscribe on this darn service. That's the thing. I really need to learn a little bit more about Twitch. That's the fundamental problem here. But yeah, the point is, if you can figure out how to subscribe, please do. And I will see you back here next week on Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. UK time. And I know last week I mentioned that I'm going to try to do 2 streams per week. Last week, Friday, didn't work out for me, but I'm hoping to get back on for a more informal streaming session on Friday. So I may see you Friday. Subscribe, and you'll get the little notification on when my stream is coming up. Man, it's really sad that I can't figure out how to subscribe to a channel, but I'll get that for next week. All right, have a good one, everybody. I'll see you either Friday or at the very least for the more formal session next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. UK time.